Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. Well, Michael, it is December 12th, 2025, closing in on Christmas. And at the end of last week's podcast, we decided that we would, the part of the problem that you and I both see in our society is that each side uses the same word to mean almost opposite things.
Yes.
And so what you did was came up with a number of words that we would then use as examples, and maybe we'll come up with some others during the podcast.
Yes. So it was right at the end of the last podcast we ran into this. It's a repeating problem in discussions that we have where we're talking about a word like the federal government. I think this happened last time. We refer to the federal government. Well, that generally means what's in Washington, right? But the classical meaning of the word is a federation of otherwise sovereign entities.
Right.
Okay. And so that really argues for a decentralized organization of states where each one has a lot more power than they do now. So when you say federalism, do you mean distributed or do you mean centralized?
Right, and I'm going to push back just a tad just to give an example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
When you said where they would have more power, it's not, to me, the issue is not that the states do not have enough power. It's that what we call now the federal government has too much power. It's
really about the balance of power, distributed or centralized.
No. What I'm saying is this. And we'll get into this. Huh? If the federal government has the authority to spend money on whatever it wants to,
right,
that has implications that have nothing to do with whether or not a state has power to do something or not. A state can say, "I won't take the federal money." But then the federal government will say, "Well, that's fine. You don't have to take it, but we're still going to tax you." And so states do take the money. And so this is and this is a great example of exactly how people are talking past each other. Yeah. Is that if the federal government, and I think both of us agree that at this point in time, if the federal government, if the Congress and the president, whoever they are at any particular time, but right now, if they chose to spend money on something, anything, under the way we interpret the Constitution today, that would be considered constitutionally acceptable or legal.
And there's tens of or hundreds of billions of dollars at stake in these kind of problems.
Trillions now.
Yes. So what we're trying to do is to back down from the day-to-day right versus left sniping about what's right, to look at this spectrum of things that is hard to manage. It's hard to discuss, and unless we're honest about the language, we really can't discuss it effectively.
Yeah. Just to kind of use, I'm going to throw in something that we were talking about, but use it as an interesting example here, and that is before we started the podcast on a separate matter, we both were commenting on a story that's been in the news for a few months about Iran running out of water.
Yes.
And so if you had a Republican and a Democrat in Iran and they both ran out of water at the same time, what would happen to them? They'd both die.
Yeah.
So the point is that a bad policy at some point in time, I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on, if a bad policy stays in place long enough, both sides lose. Both sides don't win. Both sides ultimately lose.
Well, fair enough. And we have some of those problems in our own country.
And we're going to be talking about that.
Okay. So let's
Michael,
play a little word game. Okay,
sure.
The way I thought we'd come at this is we have about a dozen or so words. I'd like to put it out there and define it, and then you find a different way of understanding that.
Okay.
Completely incompatible. Okay.
Right.
First one is liberal. Okay. I will say a liberal is someone who wants to liberate things from the way they are done now, basically to change, to innovate, to grow, and it's an open idea. To open closed systems, to liberate them from past practices.
Okay, I would. That's the way the term liberal is used more often today.
Well,
in the historical way, a historical liberal was actually more of a conservative. in the way we think of things today. A classical liberal believed in a framework that people operated within the framework, and that the framework was not easily changed because of whims of the majority at a given point in time.
So you're pointing to the problem here, but I think you have it backwards. The classical liberal is somebody that wanted to undo the people who wanted to conserve the power of monarchs and kings and despots, and it was basically a more democratic orientation to be liberal. In the 1800s, a classical liberal wanted to liberate people from that. Now liberals want more centralized power, right? Today, I would say today's meaning of liberal is somebody that is quasi-progressive, wants more power concentrated in Washington, more taxes, more regulations. They do not want to liberate people from those encumberments.
Right. Well, I'm saying that,
and the conservatives don't want to conserve the way we're doing things now.
Correct. And 200 years ago, it was exactly the opposite.
Yes.
So
yeah.
All right. So
yeah.
we can agree on
so
that word no longer means what it used to mean.
Exactly. And if you call somebody a liberal today, most people will think they're on the political left.
Yes.
That they're in favor of more taxes and more regulation, more
spending, more entitlements.
Right. That's not the meaning at the time the country was founded.
That's correct.
So you go to interpret the Constitution, if you were to use the word liberal, then you've got a big problem.
Yeah, if you say a liberal interpretation of the Constitution, you have satisfied everybody, but you haven't explained anything.
Exactly. So conservative is the other one. We've kind of touched on that.
Yep.
It's the counterpart to liberal. Civil service. What do you think about civil service? What is it?
Civil service is the simplest. My simplest definition is somebody who is in civil service, works for the government, but not in the military.
Yes. I think a civil servant is a deep state. Okay.
I think it's become. You're saying
it has become the
that.
deep state.
Okay.
Yeah. So we use a different word for it, deep state. But so here's the history behind that. You know, in the late 1800s, there was a lot of corruption, and basically jobs in the federal government were given to political cronies. A lot of people were incompetent. They were corrupt. Bad stuff happened. So they started the civil service with the idea that people had to be competent. They had to pass exams, et cetera. And this was the beginning of an idea that they were independently competent managers of the government and not politically accountable. Okay. Now we have, before the Supreme Court, can Trump fire somebody in the executive branch? These are civil servants. Are they independent and have integrity and they're upholding the law apart from what the president tells them to do, right? Or are they politically active, resisting the legitimate authority of a president to carry out policy otherwise than what the president wants? That's kind of what we're facing now, but it's based in the idea of what is a civil servant.
Well, yes. I mean, the way you have described it.
How much autonomy do they have?
Yes, and the way the Constitution envisioned it. So we're not talking about legislation since the Constitution. We're talking about the Constitution itself.
Yes.
The Constitution itself said there'll be three branches of government. There'll be the Congress, divided into two houses. There'll be the judiciary, and there'll be the executive branch.
I think they described them in legislative's Article 1, executive's Article 2, judiciary's Article 3.
That is the order that they are described in the Constitution. But every employee of what we now call the federal government, every employee was envisioned to be working for one of those three branches.
Yes.
And so if you are and the Constitution very clearly says the president is the head of the executive branch.
Yes.
And has the authority to administrate the executive branch.
Two of those branches are politically accountable in elections, legislative and executive. And the executive, meaning the president, is politically accountable.
Yes.
Now we've grown a big branch with a lot of people that are not politically accountable.
Right.
So,
and so whether or not that is constitutional is now going to be decided.
Yes.
Because there was a case, I don't remember the case, but it was 90 years ago, where civil servants were considered to be unfireable except for cause.
Yeah.
And cause could not be that the civil servant had to carry out the agenda,
Of
the legal
president.
agenda of
Yeah.
the president, the
Yeah.
legal agenda
And
of
this
the
was
president.
argued last week before the Supreme Court.
Yes.
A challenge to this, that the
Yes, and-
bureaucrats don't have that much independence.
In fact, on that issue, if you'd like to, if I can give you.
Well, let's do our word game first,
Okay,
and then,
all right.
then we'll get
But
into
come
the-
back to that because Ketanji Brown Jackson gave she made a statement when the case was being heard.
Yes, a rather remarkable one.
Yeah,
as I
but
recall.
what I'm saying is it really very clearly articulates the argument, which I don't agree with, by the way, but the argument that a civil servant has legal protections that don't exist in the Constitution.
Okay.
And then she makes the reasons why, whether they exist or not, the courts should rule that they do.
Wow.
So I mean, so I'll read exactly what she said, and we can discuss it.
Okay, let's come back to that.
Okay,
Okay, so federal.
that's a great one.
What is a federal government?
A federal government is a government that was conceived by our Constitution, where you had what we call a constitutional republic is another way, but a federal government is you have a central government that has limited powers, and then you have a number of states that, and then those states within the boundaries of their state, other than things that are prohibited to the states by, in our case, the Constitution, the states could set their own laws. And
Yes, so let me just read the definition. I think summarizes what you're saying.
All right.
A federation is a political entity characterized by a union of provinces. Okay, so when Lincoln said he wanted to preserve the union, what that means is preserve the connections between separate entities.
Right.
And at that time, the country was thought of as like a league of states, of separate political entities that had their own authority. Right? So,
But let's talk about what the Constitution did, just very briefly. And that is, the Constitution said that those states did not have the power to coin money
yes,
because the Articles of Confederation had given them the power to coin money, and within 5 years, it was easy to determine that wasn't going to work.
right,
And then the other one was interstate commerce,
right,
that they couldn't apply tariffs
to each other.
Yes,
Yes,
and that power would be in at the national level.
and it provided for a common defense so that each state didn't have its own military
And a
fighting the
militia.
other states. Yeah,
And again, in the Second Amendment, they said a militia,
yeah.
and that was under the right to bear arms.
And it established a judicial branch that was a place of appeal. The states had somewhere to go to
Yes.
within some limits. I think under federal law, they have their own Supreme Courts, right?
Right.
But
Each state has its own. I think each state has its own state constitution, but each state certainly has its own court system, including a Supreme Court for the state.
Right. So a federation is like a league, like a baseball league, where each team has its own.
That's a good that is a good example. Yeah.
And so when we say the federal government today, some people mean what goes on in Washington. Other people mean we should have a more distributed pattern of power.
And if they're having a debate, the use of that word for the people who are watching the debate is very confusing.
Yes. Okay. So here's a real hard one: female.
Ooh, that's it. That's a tough one. Didn't used to be. It didn't used to be. A female was. Well, I'm not going to get into the anatomy part, but.
Well, I can do that without embarrassing you.
Good, thank you.
It's an adult girl.
Okay.
A female.
So a girl is not
A woman. That's a woman. I'm thinking of the definition of a woman as an adult girl, an adult female. That's pretty
What's
simple.
a girl?
Well,
See?
yeah.
Okay.
I know what a girl is.
I think I do.
A girl
I
has
used to-
certain chromosomes, is the way we describe it now. Has
that's-
two X chromosomes.
Yeah.
But more typically, historically, it's a girl that has certain genitalia.
Right. And a
Okay? And it was
male
quickly observable at birth.
and a male had different genitalia.
Yes.
And then part of the discussion is that apparently, and I don't remember what the right word is, but apparently 1 in 10 million or some very small number,
percentage
have a genitalia that is not male or female in the
yes,
traditional
hermaphrodite has
that what
features of both.
Okay.
That's an old Greek word. This was observed centuries ago.
Oh.
There are very rare exceptions where the chromosomes mix in a weird way, and they give mixed kind of. And now you'd call that maybe.
But also those hermaphrodites.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah.
That was something that happened in nature.
Yes.
So
Right.
it didn't happen frequently, but it happened in nature.
And it's real, but it's just very unusual.
Yeah.
It's an edge case.
Yes.
Feminism.
That's a great one now, because it used to be that a feminist stood up for what until a few years ago, the interest of women.
And if you can't really precisely say what women are, it becomes a very complicated field of study, doesn't it?
Very, and that's where part of the arguments are now.
Racist.
Yeah, that's another one where I know what a racist is. A racist is somebody who thinks that one race is either superior to all other races, or that another race is inferior to their race or another race. In other words, it's purely the determination of somebody else based on their race.
Yes, I was going to get to that one, where you judge people on their race exclusively or principally.
Yes.
And so now we use the word in a different way. How? That's the old definition, is to prioritize race over everything and to judge people based on their race ahead of all other criteria.
It seems to me, Michael, that the way that it's used now is only against the white race.
Yeah,
it seems to me that the black race does not think, when they say something that is negative about the white race, that's pejorative in nature, that is a racist comment.
So it's associated with power. A racist is somebody who has power and can disadvantage other people because of their white privilege, for example. But if a black person calls you a honky or says something that's very much about your color of your skin to the exclusion of anything else, that's not racist, because they don't have power to hurt you.
But it's that they have. The argument is that a white person has inherent power, not has power. Because some white people have.
Fair enough.
Well, but I mean, some white people have power, some black people have.
That's right.
And
exactly.
some don't, and some,
We're dealing in gross generalizations here.
Well,
that's part of what makes these words difficult, because there's exceptions to everything.
So, for example, a white head coach has power over black players. A black head coach has power over white players.
Sure.
So it's the position of the coach, not the race, that determines the power when it comes to a football team.
Yeah, the mentality of the coach. Is that what you mean when you say the position of the coach?
I'm saying the head coach. If the person is named the head coach, and the head coach says, get off the field, I'm putting somebody else in for you, it doesn't matter what the race is. The head coach has the authority to make that decision.
Right.
And if they pull somebody of the opposite race off the field, they're doing it to try to win the game, not because they're a racist.
But if somebody studied statistics and said, you're pulling a disproportionate number of blacks out of the game, you're racist. You're having a disparate impact in your decisions. It's a racist impact.
I can make the comment, since I think that black athletes are generally better athletes than white athletes, then if you're doing that, you're probably
racist for saying that,
and you're not going to be a head coach very long, because you're going to lose the game.
Yeah, fair enough.
And by the way, I love football, so but the example is, the word power is another. It's not on our list, but inherent power. There was a lady from Kentucky, a state legislator. I don't know if I think I sent you the clip.
Yes.
And her grammar wasn't very good, because she said that she is ashamed to be white on most days. That was what she said. And so when you read that, to me, she's white on all days, not most days. Because what I'm saying is the way she worded it, she put the definitions, she put the words in an order where most was defining.
Yeah, we know what she means.
I know what she meant, but I'm just saying it was funny. It was you would have looked at that and said you would have.
You and I have a long history of doing that, because it's just fun.
Yeah, but anyway, what she said, and by the way, I think she was trying to say one thing. I think what she said is racist. Now that would be, and I've been.
Well, she's judging people exactly because they're white. They have privilege, and they have to.
Well, not just that. She's assuming that no black person can succeed. That, to me, that's the racist part.
They're both
she's
racist.
saying,
Yeah.
well,
You're judging people by the color of their skin.
I get that, but when I'm saying she's racist, not in favor of the white race, she's racist. That statement is one where she says, "Oh, you poor black person, you'll never succeed because you're black."
Yeah.
And I'm so ashamed of that. Well, there are lots of black people who succeed, and my on that particular one, it's if what she says is true, it's an unsolvable problem.
I just have to say, I kind of get sick of the whole thing because the term is used so loosely. It's basically a way of censuring somebody.
You can get
it has
tired.
Very little meaning.
Yeah, you can get tired of it, but it's not going to go away.
Yes.
And I'm
going to make it go away and move to the next word.
Move to the next word.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is an anti-Semite?
An okay.
Or what is anti-Semitism, if you prefer?
I'm going to say anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is somebody who believes that people who are Jewish are inferior.
Yes.
Would that be what an anti-Semite?
Yeah, historically, that's what it means.
Okay.
Now, Semites are a race, and I think it's broader than just Jews. I think there are some Arabs that are Semites, for instance. I don't really know all of the fine detail on that anthropology.
Okay.
But historically, it's meant hatred of Jews.
Yeah, okay.
Censure of Jews. What happened in Europe in World War II was its most extreme expression.
Yep.
But we still see people that attack Jews just because they're Jews.
Correct.
Okay. But there also are people who think anti-Semitism is anyone who criticizes the state of Israel or its leadership or its decisions.
Now, may I ask you a question here on this, and that is the word Zionist.
Yeah.
Is the word Zionist attached more to the question of Israel?
Yes.
Than it is Jewish.
Yes.
Okay, so
Jews are dispersed all over the world.
Okay, but Zionist is if you are a Zionist, then you support Israel's right to exist.
Yeah, I think Zion is a term that was used for a couple of thousand years, looking for the restoration of the biblical state or community of Israel, of Israelites.
Yes, and by the way, and we're not going to get into it today, but the question. The question of the Jews and the non-Jews in that area of the world has been going on. The arguments and the fights have been going on for thousands of years.
Well, sure, and I think even Jews are very critical of one another. They're very sharp and have highly elevated sensibility on this kind of thing. They're having these fights internally. So I think
if I am Jewish,
to criticize Israel, what I'm trying to say is to criticize them. There's nothing wrong with that. That should not be censured. But hatred of Israel and knee-jerk condemnation of Jews is obviously unacceptable.
Well, there's and within the Jewish faith, and I'm getting outside of my lane here, but there are a number of Jewish people who are ethnically Jewish and atheist, and they're
Jewish
open.
means a lot of different things.
Well, Jewish, a person who is ethnically Jewish can be a very religious Jewish person or a very non-religious Jewish person.
Sure, yeah,
and
it's an ethnicity.
Yes,
it's a.
But some people who are not ethnically Jewish convert to the Jewish faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
there's confusion.
By the way, you get the same problems about what does it mean to be an American? Do you follow a creed? Are you born here? There's a lot of ways of understanding what does it mean to be essentially American that are corollary to what we've just discussed about what does it mean to be Jewish.
Yes.
Okay. Justice.
That's another word that means a lot of different things.
That's right on our list. All of these words are on our list.
Yeah, I like your comment here, your parenthetical, outcome or process.
Yes.
Justice, that is a when I say a loaded word, I don't mean it can be used in a loaded way to make whatever. You can make a bunch of different arguments using the word justice, and the arguments mean the opposite of each other.
To me, justice means fairness.
Okay.
Okay, in a moral sense, it has a very particular legal
And
sense.
what's fair?
Well, this is the problem. Is it fair for people to get what they deserve or to get the same as everybody else? Equality is another one we've already anticipated. Equality, as currently used, often is having the same as everyone else, the same assets, the same income, the same status in living. Right? The other way of looking at it is that you get what you deserve or you get the same opportunity as everybody else.
You get the same opportunity.
Yes.
Is not necessarily what you deserve.
Yes.
But you get the same opportunity.
Yes.
Because somebody who works very, very hard but still has an idea that doesn't succeed might deserve to be as successful as somebody who does have a good idea and works equally hard. But that's
exactly. But they don't succeed.
But they don't succeed. So and this gets into this whole question of fairness. In the simplest way, in order to get equal results, the only way to do that is to make everybody equal to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, because you can't raise everyone else. And here we kind of tinker with the idea of racism. Like, what does it mean highest? We don't mean this in a racist sense. We mean in terms of success and quality of life.
Generally financial well-being. Let's just say financial well-being.
I was going to say prosperity, but yes, financial well-being.
Yeah. And so, for example, if you have 10 people who are lined up or to run a 100-yard dash, the only way to have an equal outcome at the end is to make the 9 runners,
the 9 fastest ones,
end up running at the speed of the slowest one.
Yes.
And then that's the only way you can have 10 people finishing at exactly the same moment.
Right.
I wonder what a football game would be if the rules of the game required that the score be tied at the end.
Yeah.
I wonder how much fun that game would be to watch.
It's very interesting. And the other thing I like to add to this is that it's antithetical to freedom.
That's another word.
Well, it's another word.
What is freedom?
But before we get there, I want to say if you want to have equal outcomes, you have to suppress freedom.
Well, it depends on what definition of freedom. Nancy Pelosi said people ought to receive enough government money so that they're free to do what they choose to do. I mean, that's a word she used.
Right.
So if somebody wants to paint and can't sell their artwork, they ought to be subsidized for the government so they can be free to do what they choose to do.
Yeah.
And so even a word as what you thought
as simple as freedom
isn't.
Yeah. Well, to be free in the classical sense, back to classical liberal, and be free in the classical sense is that you're on your own. You get what you can earn,
succeed or fail on your own.
Yeah. And there's a more modern idea of freedom that people should be liberated from their own inherent disabilities. If I'm not very smart, I'm not very free to succeed, so I've got to be compensated for that.
Well,
right?
And then there's the argument. Then what are the ramifications of that for society as a whole?
Yes.
Michael, for all of these, I think I asked you a question, and I may not have, but I'm going to ask it, and that is that if somebody is running for public office to serve in Washington, to be elected and be in Washington, and they're asked, and you were asked, you're that person, and you were asked, what is your goal when you are determining what policies ought to be? What is your overriding goal? What's your most important goal?
Well, for me, it's the long-term prosperity of the country.
And I'm going to push that just a little bit farther to see if you agree with it. It's to have policies for the greatest amount of prosperity for the greatest number of people possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, for me, it isn't just the prosperity of the country. It's the prosperity of as many people in the country as possible.
Yeah, so this pushes on what do I mean by country? Is it its government? Is it its states? Is it its people? Is it some of its people at the top and bottom of the spectrum of achievement? Those are all legitimate questions. Country is a category.
But what I'm saying is that if somebody says if I have the power to do so, I will make sure that everybody's income is exactly equal.
Yeah.
Now that's a goal.
Right.
That would be a goal,
Right.
and that would be a goal that could be achieved with an immense amount of power. But what you and I are saying is that somebody who exercised that power to bring about that goal would only be able to bring about an extremely low standard of living for everybody.
Yeah, I was thinking, I would say that has two outcomes. One is bankruptcy. The other one is poverty, and maybe both.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, doesn't it sound great?
Oh, it sounds great.
For a politician who is running is saying, I want everybody, if I have the power to do so, I will make sure that everybody is exactly equal.
What I mean by the answer, and I say the long-term prosperity of the country, is I think that's more important than anyone's pension, than anyone's health care, than anyone's housing, than anyone's nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
If you ruin the country, if you collapse the infrastructure that we have, that's the best the world has ever seen for producing well-being and prosperity and growth. It hurts everybody.
Of course it does.
And so, I would be willing to give up my Social Security pension if everyone else does, if that's what it takes to make the United States prosperous.
Yeah,
that's not the priority. It's
right,
everybody to have a big pension.
Yes, but not everybody's going to do that. And so now that's why you get elections. Elections are so difficult now, primarily because, or in part because, everybody uses words differently.
Sure.
I mean,
that's the point of this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've got, another half dozen. Rather than go through each one of these, I think our listeners could do their own.
Yeah, but you can just morality,
Yeah. So here, like with justice, there's an outcome or a process. Justice, I've been on juries. Whatever the jury comes up with is justice. Right?
Okay.
It's the process that they emphasize, that it's a fair process.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that think justice isn't justice unless you get an equal outcome, for instance.
Okay.
Not a free one, an equal one.
Right.
They're looking at the outcome.
Right.
And there's a parallel then with morality. Is it intent or results?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people judge morality by how pure your motives are. We think there's a lot of people on the left that have very ambitious motives that can't be realized. They are non-realistic. So they might be considered moral in one sense, but they produce terrible outcomes.
Yeah. And so you have equality. What is equality? And that's, broadly speaking, it's either equality of opportunity or equality of result. And by the way, when we talk about equality of opportunity, in a system that works like ours does today, somebody who has a really good idea and is willing to work hard but doesn't have money,
yes,
what they do is they go give up part of their business, part of their profits, in order to get somebody who does have money
to invest in
them.
So they raise equity.
And so if you don't have equity, if there's not a lot of money that is saved that's available for investment, then people who have ideas and are willing to work hard, they have no place to go in order to get the money to cover the losses that the business incurs while it is growing to become profitable. And that's a really important point in all this, and it's where people that I would describe as the left. By the way, I think the one word that is pretty easy to agree on is what is it to be a person of the left, not progressive anymore, not liberal anymore, but a person of the left. And a person of the left generally does not like private property.
Mm-hmm.
And Mamdani, who's just been elected mayor of New York, when he was being interviewed, he said he believes that private property is immoral and that government should own the means of production.
Yeah.
Which means that government should control everything that has value. Everything that has value should be controlled by the government. Now, here's what's interesting about that. The government is not a thing. The government still is people.
Lots of people.
Well, it's people, whether it's lots or whether it's a few. But the point I'm trying to make is that Mamdani, if he believes that he ought to be the top guy who controls all the property because he's the top person in government. Well, doesn't he then own the property if he's the top guy? Of course he does.
Yeah.
Because he controls it.
Someone explained to me, a friend who's Catholic told me that one of the reasons that they didn't take wives is that it would dissipate their property, because the way the laws were structured at the time combined person and institution. You know, like in Arabia, priests, yeah, and like in Arabia now, there's sovereign wealth, but a lot of times it's associated with a family. You know, like in Saudi Arabia, Saudis are a family. And so you get this kind of overlap between person and institution. You had it in the Catholic Church, and the way it was explained to me is that they couldn't marry because the laws of inheritance would split up church property over time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So now you're talking about...
So then when the priest died, the priest's property went back to the institution.
Yes.
Because it didn't go to anybody. There wasn't anybody to inherit it.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so now you're talking about Mamdani and who's got the property, right? And it's kind of a conjunction of person and institution.
Yeah. Well, whoever has the power to determine how something of value, whatever that is, how something of value is used, owns that property. Now, it may not be from a, quote, purely legal standpoint, but from a purely practical standpoint. You don't need a law that says, I'm the dictator, I will dictate how property is used.
Yeah, fair enough. Conceptually, it's who's got control of that material,
right, and
that land, whatever it is,
right.
You know where left and right comes from, by the way? Just the words. It comes from French. Politically, it's political meaning for the left or the right. It comes from the French assembly, where the right was the nobles.
Oh.
Those were the traditional folks that had all the power, the aristocrats.
Okay.
The left was the people. Okay, and so that roughly correlates
in their parliament.
In their parliament,
in their parliament.
Yes.
Okay.
They physically
the nobles were there as a matter of birth.
Yes.
And the other elected officials the other people who were there were elected.
I think so.
Okay.
But they represented the people, and so you have this division of interest. You know, and so you can see how that goes forward in time to the idea that the left is liberal. The right is conservative because they want to conserve old privileges. And we've talked about how that's been overturned now. The conservative,
now the left is the party of bigger government.
Yes,
which would be the nobles of France.
Right,
that's interesting.
Yeah, we've talked about morality and equality. We have rights. You know, we've touched on that. A number of prerogatives. Is a right, a negative right is one that says I have to be left alone. It's mine. It's my property. You don't have a say in how I dispose of it. Okay.
Well, a right.
I'm using a specific example. A right is much more general. It's something that you have as an individual by nature of your being a human.
Well,
whether it comes from God or from nature.
A right that does not require somebody else to give
provide
up,
something.
To give something up involuntarily.
Yes.
That's not really a right. So if I have the right to breathe, nobody's having to give anything up.
Yes.
For me to have the right to breathe. For me to have so in the Declaration of Independence, it says the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And essentially what that also meant, it came from John Locke, life, liberty, and property.
Yes.
Meaning that a person had the right to keep the fruits of their own labor.
Yes. And I think the founders did not include property in it because under some interpretations it means you can't tax. You can't take away a portion of somebody's property in the form of a tax.
In the case of Jefferson, he saw the right to property as a subset of pursuit of happiness. He was trying to actually expand property rights beyond Locke's, what he believed, more narrow interpretation.
Yeah.
To the pursuit of happiness meant more.
Fair enough.
But included
the
right to the fruits of your own labor.
Right.
So, go ahead.
So we have rights as positive or negative. We've said a negative right is to be left alone. A positive right is an obligation someone else has to you to provide what you can't provide for yourself.
Or what you want.
Yes.
Not necessarily what you can't provide for yourself. It's what you want that you don't want to provide for. Either you can't or you don't want to.
Okay. Speech. We have, the freedom of speech is one of our most profound rights in the Bill of Rights. It does not exist in other countries. We're having a controversy now with criticism of Europe that does not permit freedom of speech in a lot of ways that we see as wrong. jailing people for posting things on Facebook.
Yeah,
right?
Jonathan Turley wrote a book called The Indispensable Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking specifically about freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But in Switzerland, a fellow was sentenced to 10 days in prison for claiming that if you dug up a skeleton years after it had been buried, that you would be able to determine if that was the skeleton of a male or the skeleton of a female. And for that, he was given a choice of paying a fine or serving 10 days in jail because the crime was creating anxiety for other people.
Who want to say that the sexes are indistinguishable.
Yes. And so that created anxiety.
Yeah.
And therefore he couldn't say that.
Yes.
So upsetting somebody else is a crime.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult standard.
It is. And in Britain, I think it's a lot easier to convict someone of libel than it is in the United States. For instance, if you say hateful or bad things, you can get thrown in jail. But there's a long history of litigation about what is speech. How do you separate it from conduct?
Right.
If you interrupt an assembly, you had this in Tennessee. You had people that came into the legislature and had bullhorns. Mm-hmm. And they were standing up, and they were basically disrupting the business. Some of them were legislators.
They were legislators.
Yeah, on the floor. There were people in the galleries
right.
that were also disrupting things.
Yes.
But what do you have to do? Does freedom of speech cover that? Can you go and stand in the middle of an interstate and block traffic? Is that freedom of speech to
that gets
protest?
Into this positive and negative rights.
Yes.
So if I have the right to shout you down, then you don't have the right to express yourself.
Yeah.
If I can bring 10 people to an event where there's a speaker, and my 10 people can scream and yell so that the speaker is not allowed to express him or herself.
Yes.
Then there is no at that point there is no right to free speech. It becomes brute force.
Yeah. So I think we've made the point. Speech is there's a spectrum of meanings, and we're quite confused.
Well, and also the right to protest.
Sure.
The definition of protest fits into that thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about guilt a little bit. There's a long-standing principle that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But we have people running around saying that you are guilty of being white when you're born, and that we ought to act on that and build laws that correct that. That's guilty without,
or
that's not a presumption of innocence.
Or I'll give you a more current political example, and that is that there are people who are Democrats who claim that blowing up what Trump defines as a narco terrorist,
mm-hmm.
bringing illegal drugs, and nobody argues whether or not I take that back. Some people are claiming them as fishermen, but the video cameras do a pretty good job of showing that boats are packed with cocaine or other illicit drugs.
They don't look like fish.
They don't look like fish.
Plastic bags.
And the boats are moving at a rate of speed that generally a fisherman's not going to be able to catch fish. but the point is that you have people who claim that Trump is committing murder. Okay, and so he is guilty of murder, and then the other side says that he is guilty of defending the country, which I think I had a great discussion years ago with somebody over the question of self-defense. And I said to the person, I said, you have a gun, you walk into your home, and you see somebody pointing a gun at one of your children. And that person who is pointing the gun at one of your children does not know you're standing behind him. What do?
I kill him immediately if I have a gun to shoot him.
Okay, well, you didn't know for a fact when you did that he was going to kill your child.
That's right.
You assumed he was.
That's right.
And so if a jury...
I think they call that reasonable suspicion.
Well, that's what you call it. But a jury...
Yes, that's what
you call it. But a jury might say, you didn't know, therefore you're guilty of murder.
Yeah.
So this it's an interesting... So, and that's, to me, this gets into if the president... And there, by the way, the data shows that there are 90 to 100,000 Americans a year, generally between the age of 18 and 35, generally, who die of drug overdoses, illicit drug overdoses a year. A lot of it's laced with fentanyl. And a lot of it is drugs that are not necessarily illicit but are counterfeit. And that's what I mean. What I mean is that some people make counterfeit drugs to help people stay awake and study.
Yeah.
And they lace it with fentanyl.
Yeah.
And so somebody thinks they're taking a drug to help keep them awake, and it kills them.
Right.
So that happens. That's part of the population of 90 to 100,000. But not 90 to 100,000 people die a year. And the question is, what should be done about that? And some people say, well, you should arrest these people on the high seas and give them due process.
Yeah, take them to court.
And take them to court. And if that is true, then we've had a 30-year experience with that being the case and it not reducing the number of people who die of overdoses.
Well, back to process and outcome. Which one produces justice?
And so here's an interesting question. Let's say that Trump continues to do. Let's suppose that he continues to blow up drug boats, and that at the end of 2 years, he has killed 150 people who are driving these boats, and the number of people who die from drug overdoses, let's say it goes from 90,000 to 50,000. There's still 50,000 who are dying,
right?
But they're now 40,000 less than were.
Right.
How do we think about that in terms of
Results.
self-defense?
And in terms of results?
Yeah. These are all interesting questions that all have to do with the words that we're describing here.
There's two more I want to touch on, and then there was an example we wanted to come back to from earlier. But these are broader in category. One is causation. Okay, we talk about why things happen, and we generally say, X caused Y. We're taught that in schools.
Okay.
I think that we are way under-taught about probability. And so when somebody said, you caused this result, maybe you did something that the result would have been different if you didn't do that thing. But you didn't necessarily cause it. There's deep philosophy about proximate cause, ultimate cause, et cetera.
Yep.
But the point is, we don't understand causation very well. And if we don't like the other guy and there's a bad outcome, I'm going to blame what the other guy has done and say that caused this bad outcome.
Okay.
That's a partisan way of doing it. We see it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Civil suits often are include that as opposed to criminal suits.
What's interesting to me is that if you think about it well, you can show that a bad outcome does not necessarily mean a poor input.
Okay.
Okay. A good decision could produce a bad outcome. A bad decision can produce a good outcome.
Okay.
That's contrary to what we normally think about causation, right?
Can you give some examples?
Yes.
Okay.
Joe Torre said that the Boston Red Sox manager who left in a relief pitcher, who then gave up an important hit, the Boston Red Sox lost the pennant. He was fired because he made a bad decision that cost them the championship.
Okay.
Okay. Joe Torre, the manager of the Yankees, the opposing team, said that decision he made was the right decision because 80% of the time that pitcher is going to succeed. What happened is 20%.
Okay.
Okay. He made a good decision. It was a bad outcome.
Okay. He made the okay.
Okay. And so the point is that's a fun one. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we live with probabilities. We have to make judgments about what we think is going to happen. They're never 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So I can make a very good decision and suffer the consequences.
Yes, and you also can make a bad decision.
Yeah.
That have
we call that luck.
Well, no. I'm saying I was going to say a bad decision that has bad outcome.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a good outcome. I call that luck.
Can you give me an example? I'm not pressing you here, but can you give me an example of a bad decision that gives a good outcome?
Well, just reverse what I said. You leave a pitcher in that's got an 80% chance of doing the bad thing, but he wins.
But he wins. Okay. All right. Well, then that gets into the no harm, no foul. In other words, you didn't know it was 80% because it worked out well.
Yeah.
I kind of say in sports, there's one particular sport where two wrongs do make a right.
What's that?
If you misread a putt and then you mishit it, it might go in.
It might go in.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, if you think it's going to break 6 inches from left to right, and then you aim there, but it's actually straight, but you mishit it and you hit it straight and it goes in,
We've referred a couple of times in our podcast history here to a famous psychologist, Daniel Kahneman. And one of the things he says is we need to know the base rates for outcomes. He said you can look and find, 80% of the time something's going to happen. When you know the base rate, you're choosing to take a risk.
And
okay, but let me finish.
Yep.
Well, he's saying if you don't know the base rates, you're speculating. It's a different, when you have that much uncertainty, it's not the same category of risk. It's a speculation about things you don't know.
Okay.
Now, so the point is we need to know a lot more about probability than we do.
That's a great point. And to make that point further, in pro football today, in college football, you see a lot more teams going for it on 4th and 1 now than you did, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Because they have now data.
They have data that shows that the percentages, if I go for it on 4th and 1, I'm going to make it X percentage of the time, and then based on time of the game and position on the field, whether it's a right choice. Now, if you go for it on 4th and 1, don't make it, the fans are not happy.
Right.
But you did make, as you say, you made the right decision. With a bad outcome. That's interesting. Okay.
One other thing here. It's a big one. I don't propose to really tackle this in today's discussion, but it's truth.
Okay.
And corollary is what's right and wrong. We talked about morality, but what's true and false. We have all these disputes about what's fake news, and I think one of the diseases of our time is that we don't believe in truth with a capital T. We think of truth as being more subjective, more psychologized. It's your truth and I have my truth, and we're going to agree to disagree, and which one of us has the truth. So this is another area I think that it would be great for our students, our kids, to be much better educated about how to think about truth in its various forms.
And I also the opposite of that is what is a lie.
Well, sure.
And I think most people think a lie is a false statement, and that is not necessarily a lie.
That's right.
If I come inside and it's raining when I'm coming into a building, and 10 minutes later somebody asks me if it's raining, and I say yes, but it has stopped raining in that 10 minutes. What I said was false, but I believed it to be accurate. Now, there are two types of lies. See, you and I have discussed this before, but I think lie is a great word to include with the word truth, because a lie is a statement that is intended to deceive.
So I wrote a chapter in my book about this.
Okay.
You may have forgotten it, but my book is Deep Trade-Offs.
Yes.
It's about sort of along what we're talking about now. It's about conflicts between separately valid things.
Mm-hmm.
The third chapter is on truth and deception. Okay, we all think that truth is good, deception is bad. Sometimes deception is very good in war. In other situations we can elaborate on. It's not always bad, but a lie is an intentional deception.
Yes.
I've heard people say, I lied. What they mean is I made a mistake, but a mistake is not it's deception.
Not necessarily a lie.
Yeah.
Could be. It's false. It's inaccurate.
Right.
But it's not necessarily a lie. But a lie of omission.
It's still an intentional deception.
It still is an intention. Yes. And so when we talk about our media, my argument with the media is that they decide not to report certain stories.
Or they not report certain considerations about a story that would argue against what they want you to conclude.
You to believe. And so I believe that's intentional.
Yes.
And so for me, since I'm not in it, but I believe that would be that would be a lie. And
if it's intentional, if they know the evidence against, and in courts, you're obligated to provide exculpatory evidence, things that are not in your client's favor, so you can really get to a balance of truth. You can't hide all of that, even as partisan is one word. I think there's another word for the law, but lawyers.
Well, the Brady law says that if the prosecution, this is in a criminal prosecution. Yeah. If the prosecution has evidence that may exonerate or may help the
accused
defend himself,
provide it.
They're required to provide it, or they can lose their prosecution over that
because they didn't.
Because they didn't. Yeah. But I think this question of lying and truth is probably, of all of these that we are talking about here, and all of them, by the way, are part of truth and lies.
Yes,
every one
it's
of
the
these
broadest category.
is,
of
in the
all.
broadest sense, it's the broadest category we have.
Right.
And it is what is creating the political debate. Let me just give you an example of and this is
the one you had in mind earlier?
Yeah, this is Ketanji Brown Jackson,
who is Supreme Court Justice.
Supreme Court Justice in the oral arguments, and this is over the question of, does the president have the power to fire a civil servant?
Yes.
Okay. And here's what she says, and this is right exactly what what you were arguing was, and this was the argument that was made and succeeded 90 years ago. Some issues, some matters, some areas should be handled in a way by nonpartisan experts. The Congress is saying that expertise matters with respect to aspects of the economy and transportation and the various independent agencies that we have.
Are you quoting Ketanji Brown Jackson?
I'm quoting her.
These are her words.
These are her words.
Yes.
So having a president come in and fire all the scientists and the doctors and the economists and the PhDs and replacing them with loyalists and people who don't know anything is actually not in the best interest of the citizens of the United States. So that was her argument as to why civil presidents should not be able to fire people who are in the executive branch, who are civil servants. Now, my guess is, based on the other questions that were asked, the stories I've read, is that the Supreme Court is likely to rule that under our Constitution, if you work for the executive branch, the president is ultimately the head of the executive branch and can fire you.
And you have to be accountable to one of the branches of government. You can't be this floating, unclear accountability to either the executive or the legislature. It's one or the other.
Well, that's what the Constitution says.
Yes.
And Ketanji Brown Jackson took an oath of office
to uphold the Constitution.
To uphold the Constitution,
yeah.
Not to interpret it, not to change what it says because she disagrees with something that somebody intends to do. And that's the toughest job for a judge, is to set aside their personal opinions.
I would look at it this way. That comment that you read says nothing about the law and what the Constitution requires, what the law requires. It's about what's in the best interest of the United States.
Correct.
I would say it's not her job to figure out what's in the best interest of the United States. We do not have 9 appointed justices that rule us.
Right.
Okay. Her job is to apply the law. She doesn't even refer to the law in that comment.
Right. And so, but that is a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
Who is
This is the living Constitution.
This is the living Constitution.
We've had a prior podcast on that where you have originalists that say the founders laid out a form of government. It's been very successful. We need to be faithful to it.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of people that think we're smarter than they were that long ago. We know what's in the interest of the country, and we're going to go beyond.
Well, people say things have changed. There are lots of things that aren't the way they were when the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution. Therefore, it's up to somebody to change the Constitution without going through the process
of amending it,
which the Constitution provides.
Yes.
And because it's hard.
Yes.
But anyway, that's going to be an interesting case. And it cuts both ways, by the way.
Right.
Right now, Trump is president. There'll be another Democrat president. Could be after 2028. And that president will have won an election, whether it's Republican or Democrat, will have won an election, and the only way the voters can change the direction of the country is through elections.
Yes.
That we have no other way to do that, to change the direction of the country. And so for me, it is, using all these words that we've done here, to me, one of the moral requirements, and they don't do it, but one of the moral requirements of a person running for office is to tell the voters exactly what they intend to do.
Yes.
If they get elected.
Yes.
So that if the voters can say, I want that to happen or I want that to happen, which would be different things.
They can make an honest choice.
The worst thing is for somebody to run for office and say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then they get elected and they do the opposite of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That is what ultimately destroys our system of government.
Yeah.
And it's up to the media to point these things out, to force people, because we talk about human nature as the basis of mostly everything we talk about.
So unless you recognize that there's 4 or 5 meanings going on when I use a certain term, you can't deal with it. You take the term the meaning that's offered, the obvious intent or meaning of the speaker, and neglect all the other ways that can be thought about.
Yeah.
So that was the purpose of having this discussion today, is just to explore this a little bit. It's a more conceptual than we often do,
right?
But I think it's very useful.
Yeah, and we hope people who are listening to this say it's kind of boring. But if they listen to it
if they're still listening now, they may not think it has been boring.
Well, that's right. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point. But words matter, and all politicians will say, if you ask them, do words matter, whether you're left or right, they will say yes, words matter.
Well, I'm told that long ago Confucius was asked for his simple solution to the problems of the day, and he said, rectify the language. It's the same point.
And he was Chinese.
That's right.
So
they're different words.
They're different.
But he was a smart guy, and he recognized that if we're not using the same language for the same meanings, it's hard to solve our problem.
Yeah. Probably also could go someplace in Proverbs.
There you go.
Find something similar to Confucius.
That's right.
Well, Michael, we're going to end there. Thanks so much. And we have one more program before Christmas. So we won't wish I guess we can wish everybody a Merry Christmas season.
Yes.
Because we're in it.
Yes.
Yes.
Happy holidays. Yeah.
Thanks.